Hey everyone, it's Kate from Sleep Time Consulting. Hope you're well. And this is the third episode of my series, Let's Talk About Sleep. And today we're going to be talking all about night wakings. So we've talked about sleep environment, we've talked about the fundamentals, we've talked about naps, and now we're talking about night wakings and how to handle them. So firstly, the first thing I want to mention to you is actually that with night wakings, it's not how you handle it right there and then that's often the issue. What you need to consider when it comes to night wakings is the bigger picture. So it's really important to understand that it's not just about that moment in time, it's about how you build up to that, whether that's what's going on in the day or what you might be doing before bedtime. So let's just talk about the actual concept of night wakings. I think sometimes it's quite reassuring to know that babies and children do wake in the night, and we've talked about that through the concept of sleep cycles and how that works. But realistically, it's actually okay for your child to wake in the night because it's quite normal. So when your child wakes in the night, especially if they're under 12 to 18 months, there's been a lot of research that's been done to say it's quite normal for them to be doing that. And actually it can be quite powerful to understand that your child will wake in the night. But it's also okay to say, I would like my child to sleep a bit better. So it's really absolutely down to you. And that's where, and I suppose in a sense, my ethos comes from. It's about what's right for you and whether that's acceptable. So if you've got a child that's waking in the night and you're okay with it, and perhaps you're feeding them or perhaps you're helping them to sleep, perhaps you're even co-sleeping safely with them, it's okay if that happens. But if you're a mum that's really tired and or a parent even, sorry, I should say, that's really tired and you would just like to get a bit more sleep, then there are things obviously that you can consider to help your little one sleep better. So let's think about what they could kind of be. Now, there are there's a number of reasons for night waking, but the main ones that I want you to kind of consider when you're looking at it is firstly how your daytime might be impacting the night. So what happens is basically we have to have this kind of understanding of a 24-hour cycle of sleep for our little ones, and we have an amount of sleep that they need across that 24-hour period. So we need to balance it between the days and the nights. And that's where, culturally in the UK, we look at a classic, let's just say on average, 12 hours of day, 12 hours of night. It can shift in between that. Other countries might have a slightly different kind of routine to that, and they will adjust their timing differently. But if we consider that 12 hours of day, 12 hours of night, and then we kind of partition of how much daytime sleep your child needs and then how much nighttime sleep they're going to get, then you get into this kind of balance. And it's sometimes when you have an imbalance in that, that's what can cause night wakings. So for example, if you've got a child that needs 2 hours sleep in the day and they're sleeping for like 3 hours, and then they're up for an hour in the night, it can make a lot of sense to say that's possibly why. And those kind of classic signs are then waking up happy and being okay with being awake. The opposite is also true, because if you've got a child that needs 3 hours of sleep and they're only sleeping for 2 in the day and then they're waking up in the night a lot, that's because they're overtired from the day. So you get this kind of imbalance of sleep between day and nighttime, and it can really impact what you are seeing in the nighttime. So consider your daytime routine. Again, I'll refer you to the link for the sleep downloads sleep needs chart that I have. Let me know if you need it and I can send it across. But that's all about understanding where your child is on the average scale. But obviously it's important, as I've said before, to look at your child and what they're kind of doing. So daytime can be really important in terms of the sleep needs. Also, nutrition is a massive thing that you need to consider, because often it's the thing that I hear parents talk about a lot. It's like, oh, my child is hungry in the night, and they might well be. And that could be definitely, especially in younger children, that's definitely a consideration. So you want to know that you're giving your child the adequate nutrition for them. And if you need any kind of help on that, then speak to an expert in that area. There are some great people out there. Health visitors are the best place to start off with, but you want to know that you're kind of ticking that box. And if your child is of the younger age, and then they might need some feed in the night. And it's just really about, again, as I go back to it, when that kind of tipping point is of when that's not acceptable for you and when you think they don't need it anymore, that you might want to kind of switch things around. So the second thing to consider is also the environment they're sleeping in. We've covered this a little bit. nice and dark, in the previous videos if you haven't seen it, nice and dark, white noise on, and just keeping a clear, safe space. Lullaby Trust is absolutely the go-to. Sometimes I hear that parents are talking about kind of early rising, and we're getting a bit more of it coming up. So you might see that you get a little bit of light coming in from your windows, and that can really spark a child awake. So make sure you're blacking out as much as possible in terms of that environmental consideration. And then we come on to the kind of the settling thing. Could it be that your child has got something that they were settling with, an external factor that they're looking for to resettle in the night? That could be something like the dummy falling out. It could be something, potentially like getting a bit sleepy on the feed or being rocked. And that could be the thing that could be waking them in the night. Not necessarily saying change that, I'm just saying recognise kind of what the difference is. And perhaps if you do think that that's causing them to wake, i.e. you're doing lots of dummy runs, for example, or you go in and you just rock them quickly in their back after sleep, then maybe it's time to kind of redefine how they fall asleep so they don't necessarily need that to go back to sleep in the night. So those are kind of the considerations around kind of the night wakings. The other things just to cover off quickly are illnesses and teething, because they can really disrupt sleep. It can be a massive kind of impact on their kind of sleep pattern if they're in pain, or if they are running a temperature or coughing or something along those lines. And realistically, at that time, you can't do much for it. You can medicate appropriately, you can give them lots of comfort, and you might just need to kind of help them through that, because it's really important that we support our children in those kind of needs. And once they're better, then you can get back on track with things. Now, the other thing to talk about is regressions, because people often can label sleep disturbances with kind of regressions, and the danger is that these regressions just become the answer to everything. So I wouldn't necessarily jump to something being a regression unless you've kind of ticked all the other boxes. There are a couple of times whereby you can go, okay, a regression is happening. The classic one is the 4-month regression, because that's a defined sleep change, and that's a pattern of sleep that's happening, and sometimes that can disrupt sleep, not always. And then you get on to other developmental ones, and that's what they really are. So if your child has started crawling, walking, lots of talking, anything else that might be happening in their world, that can cause their sleep to be disturbed. So I give it a couple of weeks, maybe support them a bit more, but then make sure at the same time you're kind of ticking all the boxes to see, has their daytime routine shifted a bit? Should we be kind of limiting the nap a little bit, perhaps? And then go back to kind of what you know as good sleep and what your kind of boundaries of sleep acceptance are. So those are kind of the factors that you want to kind of consider. But let's talk about what to do in the night as well, because there are things you can consider. And this becomes a real personal preference, because I do think one of the things I do tell to my clients, and we discuss what this looks like, is like, okay, when your child wakes in the night, what do you do? Do you rush straight to them? Because sometimes that's a kind of sign to them to go, it's okay, you can wake. And actually sometimes if we just wait, even just like 30 seconds to go, they just sort of cry up and then they go back down again, and they can resettle themselves. So if you can just spend a moment or two, doesn't have to be ages, just listening to kind of what their upset level looks like, whether they're sort of just settling themselves, because sometimes they can have a whinge in the night. My son did it the other night. He kind of woke up, screamed, and by the time I got to him, he'd gone back to sleep again. So I should take my own advice and wait and listen. It was just a moment in time, and so he was okay. So sometimes we just need to wait a little bit. And then it's really about kind of goal setting for yourself. So like I said earlier, if your child is waking in the night and you're not okay with it, then you kind of need to work out what's acceptable for you. So maybe that goal setting looks like, okay, my kid is waking 4 times a night and I would like to reduce it to 2 times a night. I'm okay with that. And so then probably what you would do, and one of my little tricks, once you know that nutrition in the day is okay, if they're waking at the first time, let's say they're waking at 10 o'clock, perhaps at that time, go in and try and resettle them. And if you've been feeding a lot in the night and you're trying to restrict that, resettle them without feeding, and then help them to go back down to sleep. And then if they sleep for longer, then you know that actually perhaps that wasn't a nutritional need, it was something else that was disturbing them, and you might need to kind of work on that basis. And if you can keep building on that, then it can help you to understand what your child's needs are in the night. And it's not about ignoring them, it's about just helping them to helping to understand where they're at with it. And so if you get to that point and you can start to say, okay, I'm going to resettle them for the first feed at 10, and then maybe they'll sleep until 12. And so then you kind of know next time that you're going to resettle them until 12, and then that can get later and later, and you're still responding, you're still helping them, you're just trying to push them into kind of longer, more consistent periods of sleep, because there are habitual sleep habits in terms of waking that can happen. So consider that as kind of something that's important to you. Then one of the other things to look at is the consistency of your approach. So if you're kind of looking at how they settle at bedtime and you've got a good routine going, you're happy with how that is, try and be consistent with that in the nighttime, because sometimes we get a bit we kind of get a bit forgiving in the night, and we confuse matters slightly. Babies, children, they love routines, and sometimes it needs to be our sort of perseverance that means that we're being consistent ourselves. So if you can, and sorry, let me just say, I know it's hard at 2 o'clock in the night to go to your child, 2 o'clock in the morning, sorry, to go to your child and be consistent. I'm not sort of saying that that's going to be the easiest thing to do. So again, maybe say, okay, up until midnight, I'm going to resettle my child and I'm going to stick with it, and I'm going to really help them to settle. And then after that point, I'm going to give in a little bit. And you just set yourselves goals. Sometimes, especially with parents I work with, we say, okay, we'll try really hard to settle them for like half an hour using an appropriate strategy that works for them. This isn't about crying it out. I'm not kind of advocating that, but for half an hour we might get them to resettle, and then we might give in a little bit. So you want to have your plan and you want to sort of stay consistent with that. But you can definitely help, and that's something I really want to kind of get across. It's not about ignoring them, it's just not about leaving them to scream. It's about kind of working out the basics and helping them to kind of settle after a certain time. So just a quick note on older children, in case anyone's got a child that's potentially in a bed that's coming to them. Think about kind of bringing it back to basics, talking to your child, letting them understand what you are trying to achieve. You can use things like sleep training clocks, like the Grow clock, to sort of denote, okay, this is nighttime, this is morning time, but be consistent. Work on goals with them as well. You know, how long they're going to stay in bed for, reward them for it, stay consistent, taking them back to their bedroom so they know that's a safe environment. If they struggle with that, think about maybe camping out with them for a few days just to build the confidence of sleeping in that room, but really focus on getting them to kind of be consistently in their room and settling for it. And you can kind of, go over things in the morning and talk to them about it all. With older children, it can take a little bit of time, but it's really important that you kind of have a consistent approach to it all. But with the night wakings, you're looking basically to assess everything that's kind of going on around you. So, we need to consider what's happening with the daytime, what's happening with the settling, what's happening with their nutrition and their illnesses, perhaps what's happening perhaps in their moment in time in terms of their development and their regressions, and then take it step by step, build your plan, know what your kind of limits are, know how you're trying to address things, and keep kind of tweaking things if you need be. I'd always say that consistency and perseverance are one of the key things that parents struggle with in the nighttime. So give something like about 3 to 5 days before changing it too much, and then hopefully you'll start to see progress. Look for those extra little bits of progress every night and celebrate them, whether that's with your child or just with your partner or husband, and kind of keep moving forward. But that's my kind of talk around night wakings today. I hope that was helpful for you. Again, just get in touch if you need any kind of help, and I will be back with another topic very soon. Take care and have a good day. Bye bye.